souls, welcome back to the Pet Loss Diaries. I'm Megan, and today I want to talk about something I really wasn't prepared for after losing Otis. It wasn't just the sadness with what you expect grief to be, especially if you've never experienced it before. It was how much I changed afterwards. And I think before grief, I imagined loss as something really, really emotional, like crying, missing them, feeling heartbroken. But I didn't realise grief could completely alter the way you experience yourself and the deepness of it, the way you think, the way you move through life, your confidence, your relationships, your nervous system, your energy, your tolerance for things, your ability to cope. It affected so much, and I did not expect that. Obviously, the circumstance around Otis's death was very unexpected as well, but I know for a fact I'm not the only person who has experienced all of this feeling after losing a soul pet. Because one of the messages I see over and over again from grieving pet owners is, I don't feel like myself anymore. And I think that can feel really, really frightening when nobody's talking about it, especially because the world expects you to continue functioning normally after pet loss. It's not taken seriously by everyone. You're still expected to go back to work, reply to people, show up, carry on, while meanwhile internally your emotional world has completely shifted. So today's episode is all about that, why grief changes people, why losing a soul pet can completely destabilise you, why your confidence can disappear after loss, why you suddenly feel emotionally unsafe. Grief affects the body as much as the mind, and how healing often starts with understanding that nothing is wrong with you. Because if you're listening to this and thinking, why can't I just pull myself together? I really want you to know there are actual psychological studies showing pet loss grief can mirror the grief response people experience after human bereavement too. This grief is real. It's real trauma, it's real loss, and I think people deserve conversations around it that go deeper than time heals, because grief is far more layered than that. So before we dive into this subject properly, let's just slow everything down for a minute as always. So if you can get yourself into a comfortable position, obviously if you're driving or doing something where you need to concentrate, please don't do this. But if you can take a slow, deep breath in, and gently let go. And let's do that again. Breathe in. Relax your shoulders. Unclench that jaw of yours. And just notice yourself for a second. No fixing. No forcing yourself to feel differently. No trying to rush your healing. Just noticing yourself, your body, and how you're feeling right now. Grief keeps so many people stuck in survival mode for months, sometimes it's years, and I think we forget how disconnected we can become from ourselves because of that. Bring to mind one thing that's helped you recently, even something tiny. So it might be a good coffee, a walk, fresh air, a memory that you've had, music, a conversation that made you feel really, really understood. So for me lately, it's been returning home to my hometown where I was born, where I've grown up, where my parents and family and friends are, and feeling much more less turmoil by being back here. And what I mean by that is every time I returned home over the last year, it's given me anxiety. I felt like I was going 10 steps back in my healing journey. I had panic attacks in the car. I felt so emotionally and socially closed off. And whereas now returning after Bali, I can see how far I've come in my own healing journey. I feel so open again as a person. And this is something I'm incredibly thankful for, especially knowing when I look back to last year and how I felt, and even knowing how I wanted to take my own life. I'm in a completely different headspace now. And after losing Otis, I genuinely didn't feel like myself anymore. Basic things felt so different. My energy completely changed, my patience changed, my ability to cope changed. I became exhausted so easily. Socialising felt so difficult. Replying to people felt so difficult. Making decisions felt incredibly difficult, and also made me feel really, really stressed. And I think what scared me most was how disconnected I felt from the version of me I used to know, because grief doesn't just affect your emotions, it affects your nervous system. And I didn't understand that at the beginning. I thought I was handling things badly, and this made, after losing Otis, feel so much more difficult. I kept thinking, why am I struggling so much? Why can't I just bounce back? Why does everything feel so incredibly overwhelming? But eventually I started learning about grief, trauma responsive, the nervous system dysregulation, survival mode, and suddenly everything made sense, because grief changes the body as much as the mind. Research showing people grieving pets can experience symptoms associated with depression, anxiety, loneliness, sleep disruption, and prolonged grief. And that is huge. I know I felt that, and I'm sure you listening have felt this too. And I think hearing that matters, because so many grieving people think they're too emotional or too attached. You're not. You lost a soul you loved so deeply. I think that's one of the reasons pet loss hits so hard, is because animals become part of our nervous system without us even realising. They're in your routines constantly. You wake up with them, you walk them, you feed them, you talk to them. They are your baby. Sleep beside them, you come home to them. They're always there in your routine, in your home environment, in your space, in your love. They become emotional safety for us. And psychologists often speak about attachment being one of the biggest factors influencing the severity of grief after losing a pet, because these aren't small relationships. For a lot of people, pets are companionship, routine, comfort, regulation, consistency, unconditional love, and emotional security. So when that disappears, your entire system notices. I remember coming home after losing Otis. I had been in Italy, I had to fly back, and the silence physically hurt. The house felt so wrong. Everything felt wrong. And I think people who haven't experienced soul pet loss sometimes underestimate how destabilising that can be, because grief isn't only about missing your soul pet, it's about your body learning to exist without a presence it became so emotionally dependent on. And this is something I really want to talk about today, because I think it explains so much. I don't think confidence disappears after grief for no reason. I think confidence disappears when safety disappears. And after losing Otis, I didn't feel emotionally safe anymore in any way. Not in my life, not in myself, not in my future. I overthought everything. I felt so unsafe in life and so uncertain. Even tiny decisions. What should I do today? Should I go out? Should I stay home? Should I travel? Should I rest? Am I healing properly? Am I getting worse? I don't want to do anything. Everything suddenly felt mentally so loud. And what I eventually realised is, when your nervous system is dysregulated, your brain starts prioritising survival over confidence. And that changes everything, because confidence isn't just being outgoing, being loud, being productive, having your shit together. Real confidence is feeling safe enough internally to trust yourself, and grief can completely shake that. So what does survival mode actually look like? I think survival mode gets spoken about online in a very aesthetic way sometimes, but real survival mode can look very ordinary. It can look like isolating yourself, emotionally shutting down, avoiding people, constantly distancing yourself, doom scrolling, travelling to avoid sitting still, overworking, sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, losing motivation. I'm sure as I'm listing these, you are feeling this right now. You probably understand this because you're going through it. Feeling numb, becoming emotionally reactive, needing reassurance constantly, not recognising yourself anymore. And for me, I think I spent a long time in flight mode. I kept moving. I travelled constantly after losing Otis, because movement felt easier than being still. Still in Scotland or my hometown, with all of the memories and pains surrounding me. And feeling constant expectation from others to feel better, or being told I was being silly in how I handled my grief. And I think hearing that can remove so much shame for grieving people. I think one of the hardest parts of pet loss is how unsupported it can feel socially. There's actually a term psychologists use called disenfranchised grief, if I'm pronouncing that right, which basically means grief that society doesn't fully validate or acknowledge. And pet loss falls into that category a lot. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. People minimise it, they rush it, they compare it all the time to human bereavement, dismiss it. Meanwhile, your nervous system is completely overwhelmed, and that disconnect can make people feel deeply isolated because externally everyone seems to think you should be okay by now, while internally you're barely functioning. And I think that's why spaces like this matter, because people need somewhere to hear, no, you're not crazy for feeling this devastated. This is normal. This is a normal response. And I don't think grief just breaks your heart. I think it changes your identity. I know it has for me, because after deep loss, your priorities shift so much. Your tolerance shifts, your relationships shift. The things you once cared about don't always matter in the same way anymore. After losing Otis, I became far more aware of what drained me, what felt performative, what felt superficial, completely superficial, what genuinely mattered, who made me feel safe, who supported me in the right way, who didn't make me feel safe. Grief stripped away a lot, and it also made me a lot more honest. I think loss forces you to confront yourself in a way very few things do, and the person you become after may be very, very different to who you were with your soul pet, and that's okay. I know I've changed so much as an individual, especially after all of the healing I've done as well, the nervous system regulation, how grounded I feel right now. I'm much more intentional, prioritise myself much more, I trust in my decisions more, I feel much more emotionally aware, and it's made me so much more aware of the impact of pet loss and advocating for it. I do think grief changes the way you see life permanently. And if you're listening to this right now feeling completely disconnected from yourself, I want to leave you with a few things that genuinely helped me. These aren't quick fixes in any way, and healing takes a long time. They're things that made surviving feel slightly more manageable. So number one, stop expecting yourself to function normally after loss. You're grieving. Your nervous system is way overwhelmed right now. Your body and brain are processing trauma, attachment loss, and emotional shock. Of course you feel different. Trust what your body is feeling. If you need to get out in nature, go and do it. If you're wanting to cry, do it. Don't feel ashamed for it. If there are certain people you don't want to surround yourself with right now because they aren't the right support for you, trust that feeling. Number two, learn about the nervous system side of grief. This changed a lot for me in my healing when I was in a headspace to be able to start my healing as well. Understanding fight, flight, freeze, anxiety and trauma responses helped me stop judging myself so harshly. It helped me realise I wasn't weak, I was dysregulated, and there's a completely big difference. One of the books that helped me understand this more deeply was The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It helps explain how trauma and grief live in the body, not just in the mind, and honestly so much of it reflected exactly how I felt after losing Otis as well. Number three, rebuild trust with yourself slowly, not through massive life changes, through small things: eating properly, going outside, resting, keeping promises to yourself. This will really help build your self-trust within yourself again. Making small decisions, creating tiny moments of safety again. Your confidence and self-trust after grief will rebuild quietly. Another book I found really comforting around this was The Grieving Brain. It helped me understand why grief feels so disorientated neurologically, why your brain keeps searching for them, expecting them, looking for them. Reading that made me feel less broken. Number four, let grief change you without seeing that as a failure. This one took me a long time. But I don't think deep love leaves people untouched. I think expecting yourself to be exactly the same after devastating loss is unrealistic. You are allowed to change, and you will change most likely. There are also more psychologists, grief specialists, and researchers speaking openly now about how significant pet loss can be. This validation matters so much because understanding grief doesn't remove pain, but it can remove the shame. That I want to mention that I know has helped a lot of other grieving pet owners as well is the amazing afterlife of animals, especially for people navigating spiritually, signs, and continuing bonds after loss. And if you're struggling mentally after losing a pet, please know that the support matters. Whether that's through therapy, community, movement, rest, books, support groups, you might want to go to Reiki, meditation, breath work, or simply hearing other people speak or simply hearing other people speak honestly about grief. You don't have to carry it silently. One of the biggest things grief has taught me is this: healing isn't becoming who you were before loss. That version of you existed before the heartbreak happened. And sometimes healing is learning how to build safety inside the new version of yourself instead. Slowly, patiently, without punishing yourself for changing. Because losing a soul you loved so deeply was always going to leave an impact. And maybe the goal isn't, how do I stop grief changing me? Maybe the goal is, how do I carry this love forward without abandoning myself too? Today's house key is this: you are not weak because grief changed you. Love changes people, loss does too, and sometimes healing begins when you stop expecting yourself to be untouched by heartbreak. Thank you for being here for another episode of the Pet Loss Diaries. If this episode resonated with you, I'd really love to hear from you. You can connect with me over on Instagram at Diary of Megan May. And if you're looking for extra support, you can also visit the Remembering Otis website and join our pet loss support community. Everything will be linked below. And if someone you love is grieving a pet right now, send this episode to them. Because feeling understood during grief can genuinely change everything. Your journey with grief, how you're feeling, the impact it has on you. Until next time, take a breath as always, be gentle with yourself, listen to your body, and remember, you do not have to carry this grief alone. Sending so much love as always.